spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples today. Welcome to Totally Lit, podcast celebrating reading, writing and creating literature. I'm your host, Kai Garvey. Thank you for listening. Totally Lit is back. Thank you so much for your patience while I took a break in the latter half of 2023. I'm really very relieved to share that my little family is back on track. I got my little guy through year 12 and he is all set to tackle the world. Both boys are really in great places at the moment, which leaves me with the chance to continue to be creative and to write and, of course, interview some amazing talent from the Australian creative community. I just wanted to give a big shout out to all the other parents out there caring and raising their children with a disability. It's a hard slog. Please take some time out for yourselves, even if it is something small. We're all better carers when we are strong and we are in a good headspace. While I've been having some downtime, I've also been in the background busily creating a wonderful list of literary guests for your listening pleasure. I'm very excited to share my first guest of 2024 is the uber-talented Dave Faulkner. Dave is an award-winning singer-songwriter, guitarist, keyboardist and composer. Dave has composed the soundtracks for a number of Australian movies, written as a music critic for the Saturday Paper and has been a member of several Aussie bands, although you may know him best as the frontman of the Hoodoo Gurus. Dave has very graciously come on the pod to chat songwriting with me. I hope you enjoy our chat. I was super proud of myself. I didn't sing at him once. Have a listen and tell me what you think. Dave Faulkner, welcome to Totally Lit.
Thanks, Kai. Nice to be here.
I'm so thrilled that you agreed to chat with me about songwriting because I thought if I'm going to chat songwriting, I want to go to the best.
It's very kind of you. But I've done it for a while, so I might have learnt one or two things. Not sure I can pass on tips, but I can tell you how my experiences such as they are.
Well, you've put out some bangers over the years, so I thought I would chat to you. I want to talk about the craft of songwriting, but first I'd like to start with, when did you write your first song?
It's something I don't really know exactly about. It wasn't something I ever set out to do. I just started making up words and singing when I was a kid, and I didn't really cotton to the fact that that's literally a thing called songwriting until a bit later. But I was just, used to love music and just felt like somehow, expressing that, and that was what I did. But then obviously later I knew that there was this thing called songwriting, and I was in a band in high school, and I wrote a couple of songs for that, which were terrible, but, I got my start doing that.
Do you recall which was your first?
No. No, I don't. No, my mother had a cassette of some songs that she'd always sort of almost not quite threaten me with, but she loved these songs and she always wanted to play them and say, oh, you should release those songs. And I'm like, no, thanks, Mum, that's all right. But, the early efforts, they were pretty, but, pretty insignificant as well.
You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Everyone does. You start with, you write like anything. You start as an imitation of your influences, and then you start to synthesize them into a more natural way, and it just becomes, your voice instead of someone else's.
Mm-hmm. So songwriting was something you had to learn, but there was a bit of an organic process there as well?
I had to learn. I mean, I just did it, I didn't learn it in a sense other than purely by, as you say, repeating it and trying it and getting better results, just being better at it. But there was no books to read about it or mentors to help me other than the great songwriters of the past who, I listened to and admired their music, and obviously, trying to get my mind into what was so great about their music. And when you do your own songs, you're trying to get the same feelings out of it that you get from theirs. Sorry, I didn't quite answer your question.
That's okay. I think you have. It sounds like there was a bit of natural talent there.
Yeah, well, music's always been there. Obviously, when I was a kid, I was also pretty good at drawing, and in fact, my art skills were what first drew attention to me as being someone that might be more artistic.
Yeah.
And music was just always there in the background in a funny way. And consequently, when I was growing up, my family, my parents in particular, they aren't certain about the idea of being an artist for a career, so they tried to guide me towards something more solid.
Yeah.
And so that became architecture, and I enrolled in architecture in university, and I didn't go to lectures because I was too busy playing music. And it wasn't until I failed architecture that I had to kind of really look at myself and see what the hell I was doing with my life. And it was obvious music was all I was doing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of just went with that. It chose me rather than me choosing it. I didn't, as I said, I didn't sort of fantasize about being a musician. I just happened to be one. And then obviously that's what I stayed as.
So have any of the songs that you've written, have they ever been influenced by things that you've been reading, or has it been more by music and musicians?
Yeah, reading. It's a hard one to specifically think of reading. I've read voraciously at different times in my life, but I've got to be honest that the Hoodoo Gurus were famous for being influenced by trashy TV and Hollywood, B pictures. So, and that was something we were quite proud of, really, in the beginning. But something we moved away from quite quickly. But there's still that sense there. I have a great appreciation of low culture as well as high culture. So I couldn't specifically name a book. I have to look at a list of all the songs to make sure that it wasn't true. But I could certainly pick out a few sitcoms and and Hollywood movies.
Mention What's My Scene.
Right.
Got a bit of Romeo and Juliet.
Oh yes, of course. I mean, that's just obviously, well, that's such a trope, Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, that's just punning on the idea, using a couple of Shakespeare titles in there. Midsummer Night's Dream is the other line in there, other reference. But yeah, obviously, to be honest, I've never read Romeo and Juliet. I'm sure I've seen productions of it, and obviously the films of it, but don't think I've ever read the play.
So that's really in culture enough to be considered pop culture these days.
Of course, Shakespeare, completely. I mean, he was pop back in the day, of course. So, that's something that people forget, that some of our, hallowed artists were basically entertainers in their own era.
And I love some of your songs, like right back at the start, Leilani, and my boys loved that when I was listening in the car. And they're like, Mum, play the Volcano song.
Well, that's from a movie called Bird of Paradise is where that came from. There's a couple of versions of that. Dolores Del Rio did one in black and white, and then I think Deborah Paget maybe was in the colour one. But it's the classic Hollywood, sort of 40s style. Was originally a 30s movie, I think. I'm not sure, but it's that sort of pastiche of legends of princesses being thrown into volcanoes to appease an angry mountain god, some sort of weird pantheistic religion and we like that, obviously. Yeah. It's just, as I say, because it's sort of cornball 50s sci-fi, it's 40s, kitsch.
And was that what you were aiming for with those sort of songs?
We were just aiming to amuse ourselves. I came out of punk rock, and that was very much a insular, really, music form. We had no desire to kind of to talk to outside people. It was very inward looking. It was just the fans of your music, and they were like your friends.
Yeah.
And then the Hoodoo Gurus sort of followed within a couple of years of that, and we weren't doing it for a career move. We were just doing a band because we just felt like playing music. And at this time we absorbed a lot more influences, and we're kind of, after punk rock, it was really a time of like releasing all of that strictness, like the being very regimented in the fact that it's going to be just hard and fast guitar playing and, and sort of, I mean, punk rock had a lot of colours to it, but, it was very much, it got to be kind of regimented. And, I started to listen to a lot of other different musics in the meantime that I'd kind of shut down during the punk rock era. It was kind of like this weird sort of purification ritual. And then I kind of opened my ears up and was able to explore further and, still armed with that sensibility of, punk rock, which was, not, don't bore us, get to the chorus, whatever, and just not being about pretentiousness, And also the quirkiness of punk as well. There's a bit of quirkiness in there that I always related to. So that sort of carried on as well. Anyway, for whatever reason, we started to diversify our influences, and that sort of came out in this sort of strange melange of different things in the subject matter of the songs we were writing, and also the sorts of songs we were writing as well.
Mm-hmm. So that leads me into the next question. When you're writing songs, are they based on real events or are they fictional? So I get the vibe that yours is a mix of both.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of both in every song. Even when you're writing most, personal story, you do slightly broaden it so that it can be more universal, so that someone understands what you're talking about, rather than had to be in the room with you at that moment, that incident that triggered it, caused that song to be written, or whatever it is, that event or experience. So there is a little bit of slight abstraction in a sense, or you're distancing from the deeply, it's purely personal to me that no one else could ever understand unless they were me.
Yep.
So you sort of slightly, as I say, expand it out to be, I'm talking about this. It's outward. And then songs that are completely based on, silliness do reveal things about you as well, because the way you write them and the things, little things that go in that sneak up on you afterwards, that you realize you said something more about your own inner psyche than you realize, I mean, even the idea of writing a song about a girl being thrown in a volcano, I mean, what's that about? That sort of is revealing in something about my psychological makeup, I'm sure. Because what is it about that story that appeals to me? And, it's as much as what you're not talking about as much as what you are talking about. There's a whole, But yeah, it's songs can do lots of different things. Some songs are just great for dancing or, having fun to or whatever. And having a laugh. And other songs maybe make you, ponder your own life, or, maybe you've had a similar experience and it makes you sort of see it differently through the way that song makes you reinterpret your emotions and your experiences. So there's not a one size fits all with songwriting, and just like any sort of, creative process.
Well, I think it can be individualized in that what you've written, I can listen to and have a really different reaction to it, even though it connects to me with something that's happened in my life.
Absolutely. Well, that's art generally, I mean, even the most specific art obviously is something you relate to yourself and connect to, separate to what the artist put into it, even though they think they've made it very explicit and so completely unmistakable as to what they're talking about. You can still have your own nuanced view of it through the prism of your experience and your emotions. But the thing about music that's so great is that, the actual music itself bypasses a lot of the intellect, and so it becomes, in a sense, its own language that speaks emotion to emotion without the filter of, having to cogitate or interpret. It's literally you respond to the way the music makes you feel. And that's a gift that music has that other arts don't always have. I mean, obviously, for example, visual arts, you get a feeling from colors and maybe some of the images that they're there, they can be extreme images that make you feel, confronted, but just like a loud guitar chord can make you feel confronted. So, there are commonalities, but music does have that unique ability to kind of speak directly to your emotions just through the musical thing. And then obviously the lyrics in some ways confines that, but also can gain from that. A lyric can have added nuance just from the flavor of the music underneath it. It gives it a bit of more texture or something, or other notes. You can have a very sad lyric with a happy music underneath, or vice versa, and the two in that contrast can actually add a different kind of flavor that neither alone could ever give you. Yeah. Now,
Writing in general can be a lonely process when you're writing on your own.
Better off lonely too. I mean, I hate having people overhear me when I'm writing.
Really?
I can't do it. Yeah. I need to be. I can't have any eavesdropping. It actually makes me too self-conscious.
Wow, that's interesting to know. So do you collaborate with your bandmates when you're writing songs, or do you go away and write?
No. I mean, I have collaborated a lot with mainly our guitarist, Brad, but usually it's something he starts and then I'll come in and I'll finish the song off or have suggestions of things to do to it but my own songs, generally speaking, I originate them and complete them by myself So, I'm a finisher offer of Brad's songs sometimes, and, he writes songs by himself as well, but by and large, my own songs, I know exactly what I want to do with them. And and that also comes down to a whole lot of other things, the arrangements and the other things in them. A lot of those things are inherent to the songs for me. It's not just the melody line and the lyric. I get the groove of it, the feel of it is part of the creation process for me. Sometimes that's what causes a song to be written. Is it literally a drum beat? For example, in the case of the song like Wow Wipeout, there was that drum beat that's what caused the song to be written. Or a little melodic figure on the guitar, those things that you would say, well, that's the guitar part, but in fact, that's the bit that started the song off as a rider.
Right.
So it wasn't something that got added. That wasn't what got added later. That's actually the part that began the song.
So when I ask you which comes first, the music or the lyrics,
there's
not a real answer there.
By and large, most songwriters, the majority is music first. Yeah. Which always surprises people that don't write songs because they think, well, what were you writing about if you didn't have a story you were going to tell?
Yeah.
But, like anyone, we've got lots of different experiences that we can always, we're having a conversation now and things are coming up in our conversation that I wouldn't normally be talking about. Yeah. But prompted that just by the questions you're asking me or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when I'm writing a song. The music might suggest some feelings, and I might think of some experience that I've had lately that has kind of been bugging me, that, sort of it's looking for an opportunity to come out in its own way, and that music can give it an avenue.
So is that a bit of a cathartic experience for you?
It is. But that said, by and large, I do write personally from a position of being in a state of calmness, not agitation, and not like just had a fight with someone. I've got to talk about it because I can't express it any other way. A couple of songs have been written like that. One in particular I talk about is a song called Night Must Fall on our In Blue Cave album, which was written about two friends of mine who had very serious illnesses, and their illnesses had taken a terrible decline. Well, actually one had died, and the other one had just had her cancer return very aggressively, and within a week of each other I heard this news, and I was completely overwhelmed. So I actually, in that particular moment, I had to write a song to kind of, in a way, process what I was feeling. But often I can't do that. That was literally me crying out for help, in a sense, using the guitar to help me kind of, connect that to, as I say, get that stuff out. But by and large, when I'm writing a song, I'm in a work mode, and I like to feel centered, so I can actually not be objective, but I'm not. If you're all steamed up about something, whether it's you're angry or whatever, you can't really be, objective enough to put that down clearly. You're so caught up in it that you can be overly, melodramatic or whatever, So it's hard to kind of express things clearly when you're agitated. So I like to, be in a calm state of mind and just, work that way. So no, I don't, it's not cathartic in that sense, but it's cathartic in that you are releasing things that are really important to you, and whether it's, your political views about something, or social angles on things, or just your emotional stuff that's going on in your life that's been really difficult. I mean, there's a song on our most recent album which was very much like that. It was a song with that friendship of mine that was very much on its last legs, and in fact, the friendship ended shortly after I wrote the song. So the song was almost predicting the end of the friendship, but it was because it showed the friendship in a very parlous state. It was me depicting the relationship that my friend was in that was the impinging on our friendship, and actually it was what caused the friendship to end, because their relationship was so turbulent that in fact I wasn't allowed to be part of that friendship anymore. But so yeah, songs can be, they have all sorts of different things they do, and even some of a song like that, for example, is a song called Answered Prayers, and it's very much about a very dysfunctional relationship, a very unequal. One partner's very abusive emotionally to the other one, and in some ways I can almost see myself in there, though, because I'm, there are things about my relations to other people I can see that I'm, at fault, and not necessarily the most, generous person or whatever. Sometimes can be very selfish, and that song expresses that part of my psyche, that even though I'm talking about someone else who's I think is a horrible person in that song, it's not. As a writer, you're never entirely guilt-free, and also you change the story to kind of make yourself the hero of your own story. It's always from your point of view. So the other party doesn't get a look in to kind of say, well, actually,
it's perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's what's valuable about it, because you are giving it an absolute prism, and people can actually, then weigh what they think about it from their own experience when they listen to it. But they think that I'm, completely telling a lie or speaking truth for them.
Now, I did watch a doco on the Hoodoo Gurus. I saw that the Like Wow Wipeout, you'd written about a friend of yours that you knew in New York. Is that right?
Yeah, it was sort of a tribute. It was not specifically. The song is I mentioned earlier about, songs that are for fun. That's very much just like a let your hair down, blast it out sort of song.
Yeah.
And, dance number, whatever. And this is a person who worked for a record company who was a really cool person, and she was very important to the band early on in America. She was a great supporter of ours, and it was kind of like a thank you, put her in the song, and I never told her, and it was only many.
She didn't know.
No. Well, she sort of. I think she must have guessed, because years later this came up in an interview, and she said in the interview, like, I always thought it was about me, and in fact And I confirmed it later. So I said, in fact, you were right. It was about you because it says about, I kissed the city of New York where I first met you. She was from New York City. So that was, a little shout out to her so that she would know. I mean, yeah.
So that leads me up to another question about, have you written a song for someone and how have they received it in terms of if you've played it to them or they knew that it was about them?
I don't really know that I've ever done that where I said, this is for you. The one I did just talk about a minute ago, though, the Answered Prayers, the person that was about, in fact, who was actually the one who I feel as the victim of this abusive relationship, they were a bit taken aback when they heard the song.
Okay.
Because obviously they
realised?
Well, they don't feel that they're in that situation,
okay.
So I haven't spoken to them about it because that friendship ended before they heard the song. In fact, when I wrote the song, I didn't think we'd ever record it because I thought this will end our friendship, this song, because it's such a bleak view of their relationship. And so that was interesting. But it was the truth from my perspective. Obviously there's a one-sided view of things. But as far as the other ones go, it's funny. No, I shouldn't be. There's been many experiences where people have had songs written about them and they've been... Sometimes they've realised straight away. Sometimes they've been told by someone else. Yeah. They said, "That's you, isn't it?" And as a very good friend of mine actually laughed because there's about one album actually has about 3 songs about them, but tangentially, like it's again me changing the story to make it a narrative out of it and to make it comprehensible for someone else. So in fact, I fictionalized the story, but there's elements of things I was feeling about that friendship in that song. And that's always happening, as on the new album, of course, as well. Other songs the new album, for example, which is called Chariot of the Gods, which is not so new now, came out in 2022. But it was very personal, actually, a lot of the songs on that, where as a lot of it is about specific people in my life and also about my own feelings about things. But, on the surface, people listen to it and they say, well, that sounds like your first album again. Like they thought it was a bit of a return to what we used to sound like when we began. I mean, I can't see it, but anyway, I'm sort of digressing a little bit.
That's okay. Which has been the most difficult song for you to write?
Well, the one I mentioned earlier, Night Must Fall, was very difficult because just emotionally, because I was in such a troubled state of mind, and that song helped me. But it was I was awful feeling that way and having to write, and trying to write a song through that. At the same time, I was very proud afterwards, and I felt really good that I expressed how I felt. So that's emotionally difficult. As far as literally difficult to write, I mean, it's songs where you have something you're trying to say and you haven't quite nailed it or distilled it properly, and you have to always sort of go back and edit more. And there was a song on the album before the last one, an album called Purity of Essence. There's a song called The Stars Look Down, which I had pretty much like 3/4 of the lyric done, or 2/3, certainly, no, probably closer to 3/4 of the lyric. And it just wasn't as in the lyric was, I had a full lyric, but it just didn't feel like it was proper. It was ready yet. It hadn't quite said what I felt I was trying to say. And I had to kind of basically just really sort of focus in and just get rid of some lines that didn't seem to be doing anything to advance the story or to complete the thought of what I was trying to express. And I remember going to the studio to record the vocal, and I said to the co-producer, my friend Giles Fisher, whose instincts I very much trust. And I said, look, I've written this song and I've got it now to the point where I think it says what I want. And and if this lyric doesn't work now, we'll pretty much have to abandon the song because I have to start from scratch, because I've gone exactly where this lyric was meant to go. I mean, I was happy with the lyric, but I wasn't sure anyone else would understand what I was saying, because it was kind of one of the more poetic lyrics I wrote. It was a series of images talking about death and things like that, which I wasn't sure that the story would be quite clear the way the song progresses. But anyway, as it happened, he heard it and he said, it's great. Yeah. I understand it. I mean, he just felt, he may not have known specifically every detail of what I was saying, but he got the drift of what it was about, and it felt, like it was saying something to him. So that was good. Other songs, as I say, I've taken like a year or two to finish the lyric.
Okay. So
because, because lyrics, they take a lot of fine tuning sometimes. Other times, they're written off at the last minute because I'm a procrastinator from hell. So, like the lyric for like Wow Wipeout, I didn't write till I had like a verse perhaps, but that was it. And I had to get in and sing the vocals. So I had to write the lyrics that morning to finish it off and go in like an hour later. But
I did just watch.
The Castle in the Air's a song it took me a long time to write the final one. There's a song on the most recent album called Carry On. And I remember the feeling of excitement. I mean, it's almost like, it was kind of silly, really. I was so exuberant when I got the final couplets in of the song that finished off the lyric, because I had reached, again, that sort of stumbling block. I always like a song to kind of like to crystallize at the end, or to take some sort of switch to kind of like I don't like when you hear a song and the first verse tells you all you need to know, and then it's just more of the same. The song ends with after several verses
with a few tropes thrown in.
Yeah, but you don't learn anything new. And I like the song to actually either reveal itself more at the end, or to complete thought or something. It's got to feel like there's in a sense, like a locking mechanism at the end where it's like draws a line and that thought is completed. It's not just the extension of the first idea that just dragged out till you stop.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I got this final couplet on the last verse, I was jumping around the room, literally jumping around the room with excitement, which is kind of silly at my age.
A lot of writers understand that feeling when you've written something and you know it's good and it just feels right.
Yeah.
I understand that feeling.
Yeah, because you're grasping in the dark in a sense. You know there's something you're trying to get out there and you don't know what it is. If you did know, you'd write it straight away. Yeah. But you are just sort of, you have a feeling of like, there's something I'm trying to say, but what is it? What is it? Where am I supposed to go right now? And as I say, I got this final thought was like, this is it. This kind of reflects what I'd said earlier in the song, but at the same time, it changes it to crystallize the thought into what this song means to go, where do you go from here? And that's what the song was trying to get to that. So yeah, it takes a lot of work and it's also, not allowing us, I've let myself off the hook too often in the past, which I regretted, where I did let a lyric get through that didn't quite nail it. Often my biggest problem has been, and a lot of authors say this, whether it's, books or, magazine articles or songs. I mean, they say that the beginning, the opening is very important. And for me, it's crucial. If I can't get the first line's not right, it can poison the whole song for me. And I've had a few songs where that's happened, where I was stuck with the first line. I didn't get rid of it. I should have. But I wrote the song and it's like, oh, God, that song doesn't say anything to me. It doesn't quite, it started off in a weak way, in a sense that it wasn't legit, and I was just kind of, I was kind of, I kind of knew, but I was kind of ignoring it to kind of see where I would go. And unfortunately, it just gone in the wrong direction straight away.
And how many songs would not make the album that would get scrapped? They weren't feeling right.
Scrapped. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I mean,
or do they sit somewhere until you come back?
Songs. I mean, it sounds arrogant, but when the song is finished, usually it's a good song for me. It may not be right for the band. The band may not like it. The band may play it, and it may not sound any good to the when we're in the room. Doesn't mean the song was bad. It just meant something doesn't work in the chemistry between the band and the song. So I can't change that. I long ago gave up any idea that I could force some things through. But
do you find other homes for songs?
No, I don't really. I mean, I do. No. But so there are songs that are, but a lot of songs end up. I don't finish them off either necessarily until like I'll go to the rehearsal room with the song musically fairly clear, but the lyrics may not be finished. Right. As I say, that's quite common. And so there's songs that just don't ever get finished. And there's a lot of those.
I watched an Amy Winehouse doco recently, and they were showing shots of her writing songs, and there were like lists of rhyming words down the side. Do you ever get to that point?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, you have to. I mean, people are surprised when you say that, you might use a rhyming dictionary or write the alphabet and put the different syllables after it to see what the rhyme might be suggested. But again, it's a tool to help you associate a meaning. A word comes up and you go, well, that word's not right because I can't think of anything that I'll be saying with that word. But just having the word can trigger an association, and you can get something that will kind of be a thought that is part of the what you're saying. So it's just a tool, So yes, absolutely. I mean, without rhyming dictionaries. And I mean, I do believe in rhyming. I mean, a lot of my songs are very strict rhyme. Very rarely do I have free verse sort of songs, where there's no rhymes. So I am forced basically to rhyme songs. And so therefore it's tying one arm behind your back in a sense, and as in you can't just say anything you want. But at the same time, parameters like that can be, freeing.
So this is something I've wondered as a fan in the audience is what is it like to hear your songs being sung back to you when you're in
a massive
crowd?
It's
and
amazing.
Everyone knows it word for word.
Yeah, it's incredible. Obviously, that's, never gets old in that sense. You feel, it's just nice to know that you've connected to people. And also, I'm a great believer in the energy that goes between an audience and a performer. It's a two-way affair, and there's something that is magical, I think spiritual, whatever, that happens in performance in front of people. It doesn't happen over electronic media, so televised or internet or through a recording, listening to a record. I mean, those are great experiences and they're all valuable. But literally the thing of communing together and making music together, because it is together, even though we're playing instruments and they're just listening, but they're contributing to the energy of the situation. There's something magical that happens. So yeah, when they're singing your songs back at you, that's another dimension on top of that. Yeah,
I've been in the crowd just going, wow, this is insane and amazing.
Well, it's nice to, it was something that, obviously I discovered quite early in my career when you find your music going places you could never dream. It's one thing to have punters that come to a show that know your music, and that's normal. You expect that. Yeah. They're your fans, they bought your record, they come along, they know the songs. But when you're meeting people that are completely from different walks of life and in different unusual places that your music's in there, that's quite bizarre. Very early on, we did a video for a song called My Girl on our first album, and we had a greyhound track sort of in this story about a trainer and his greyhound was the video. The song's not about that, but the video was. And then we heard about a few months, 6 months later or something like that, we heard that or maybe a few months later when the single came out, that the race meeting, they suddenly just said, well, we're now going to play a song by the Hoodoo Gurus over there over the monitors, which shows all the different race meetings that are going on, because how the races, they never stop. There's always something on top. There's a race here, there, and everywhere, all over the world really, and they're always betting on every race. So it's super important. They interrupted it to show you like a 3.5 minute pop video because they like the song so much, and and I just thought, this is wild. Yeah, this is us actually in the real world, so to speak. Not just in the rock and roll ghetto or a music venue, and we're actually out there touching people's lives in a more general way, which I was really amazed by that. And that's obviously been borne out many, many times over the years, such as when we played on a Navy ship, and things like that. The crazy experiences that you couldn't imagine.
Your dad was in the Navy.
He was in the Navy in World War II,
so was that like an amazing experience to play on a Navy ship?
It was. I mean, because, like my father didn't like rock and roll, and he never understood it. He thought that the kids were being hypnotized and they would if they only heard the proper music, they'd like that better. Things like Bing Crosby, things like that. Yeah. So when, we're playing on board this vessel and it's just Hoodoo Gurus and this crew and my father, he's the only other guest, and he was kind of completely blown away that, there's no other dignitaries or, people. So he was like, how does this happen? And I'm wondering, how does this happen? Yes. I mean, I know it's happening, but it's very strange and cool. And so, our worlds kind of collided in a way we could never have expected, in that moment.
It gives you a wonderful opportunity. I've got a picture book out, and sometimes I just go to my dad, that's you in the book, Dad.
Right.
So he's on the cover, although he would never wear a flanny like the character does in my book.
Yeah, but that's all good.
It's a wonderful way to commemorate something from your life and say, we did, because my dad used to take me roller skating on a Saturday morning, and that's what my book's about. And I can go, thanks, Dad. I have this wonderful memory, and now we're sharing it with the world. So,
Yep, absolutely.
So I'd love to ask you about your process when you're writing a song. What do you just dash it out in a notebook, or do you set yourself aside time?
Yeah, I very much... I accumulate ideas just in my general day-to-day existence, so I don't realize I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I use my iPhone. If I'm out, I do morning exercise, go for a big walk in the mornings, and often, there's little musical ideas popping into my head without me realizing it. You know, it's a bit like a radio station's always sort of playing in the background with me, you know, like, or a tempo or something. There's a groove sort of there, which I can tune into or ignore. But it's sort of, my brain is partly, you know, sensitized to that all the time. So there's always a part of my brain sort of slightly musically ticking away, you know. And so things sometimes, just little melodic ideas will pop out, and I'll be singing it to myself and going, I've got to remember this. So I'll sing it as a memo into my phone. And so I save those on my computer. And so when it's time to do a record, I will go through all these little kind of, in a sense, these work tapes of melodic ideas and riffs and things that I've worked on. I might, you know, be playing the guitar and, you know, fiddling around on some notes, and that something pops out that surprises me, and I, you know, work that into something.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like a jotter, you know, a sketch block in it for an artist, you know, where, you know, some little detail of some building or a person they've seen, you know, they might sketch that and, you know, just to sort of commit it to memory or a sense, or record it. And then when you go back to work on a major piece, like, oh, this is interesting, this idea, and they'll do that. So the same way with a song. So I tend to do nothing unless I'm forced. So I have to book rehearsal time, you know, demo time, studio time, and producers and budgets, and do all that stuff. Lock myself into a process of, like, in 3 months we're doing the recording, and this is what's going to happen. So to make myself actually finish these damn songs. So then when I've locked into that, I will then have to do something. So I just don't allow myself. I make myself sit at my table in my house, 9 o'clock till 12. Not allowed to get up.
Okay.
Just like most writers, you've probably heard this before, and it's the same thing. Can't get up. And the first 3 days can be kind of torturous, but usually the third or fourth day, the magic happens. Because basically your ego or id, whichever one it is, gives up. The inner critic retires because it says, look, there's no point me, you know, yelling at him now, because he's going to be sitting here for 2 hours no matter what. So you switch, that part of your brain switches off.
Okay.
And you start to be freer to play in an unconscious way. And
it took me 40 years to overcome my inner critics.
Well, the inner critic's always there, obviously. And when you're editing yourself, and, you know, when you're writing, as I say, when I'm sort of trying to hone a lyric, you need that critic to kind of like go, that's not good enough. That's not saying what you think it says. You know, you can't let that go. Yeah. That's when it's useful, but it's not useful in the initial phases when you are trying to just generate, you know, some unconscious things to come out that you know, surprise you. If you trying to construct them from your critic, that's going to be all things you already know, and you always say, well, that sounds like that. I'm not going to do that now, am I? You know, you'll stop yourself. Yeah. So it's inhibiting. But yeah, so that's the thing. So I just, you know, give myself a routine, you know, 5 days a week, whatever. And once the flow starts, then it's kind of trying to stop me writing. You know, it's flowing, and it's wonderful. And I, you know, I'm in that sort of slightly aroused state, you know, where, you know, the endorphins are kicking in, and you're just, you know, and you're popping, ideas are popping out. I mean, I'm starting to suspect I might have a slight amount of bipolar there that's behind that. So I do get slightly, you know, a little bit overstimulated.
I was going to ask you, because a lot of the songs from the Hoodoo Gurus are upbeat kind of songs, but the lyrics aren't always upbeat. Is that a reflection of your mood or personality, or was it you just decided this is the type of music I want to play?
I just like strong melodies and rhythms, and you know, so I came from punk rock, and I just like things that have energy. Yeah. Even when it's a ballad, I like the song to have a kind of, you know, momentum to it, and not just be amorphous and sort of, you know, drifting along. I like it to feel, you know, some inner momentum. And yeah, it's just the sort of music I that's what I write. I mean, I it's not a choice. It's just what I do. It's a choice in the sense that I guess I'm writing those songs. You know, I'm choosing to write them, but it's just how I feel. And you know, I'm just lucky in, you know, if I was someone that wrote, you know, very abstruse classical music or, you know, folk music or something, I'd be probably not, you would be talking to me right now, because I'd be unheard of. You know, I'm just lucky that I'm in this area where that sort of music can get attention. And, you know, I managed to sort of break through that barrier of radio and whatever it was back in the day that kind of made my songs reach people, and that they could actually come and still know who I am today and want to hear those songs.
And you guys are still like touring and doing a mix of shows as well. So not just big venues, you still pop into smaller venues.
Now and again. I mean, I'll be honest, less of that these days. Yeah. That's be honest, and COVID has made that problematic. I caught COVID the last 2 small gigs I've done, really. Anyway, but yeah, I caught COVID in March from a pub show. We were doing the warm-up before doing the New Zealand tour. Did a couple of shows in the north coast of New South Wales, and I caught COVID. And then I caught COVID the other night when I did my old punk band. We did our final show in Sydney after, so many years. I decided to do a couple more shows, and I got COVID the next day from that.
Oh.
So, whether I caught it at the venue or flying aeroplanes or whatever, you can't tell. But yeah, so yeah. But not all about COVID too. We just love playing. We'd play anywhere. It's not a chore for us. We love playing music. We love that liberation of being in music. The way I describe it these days is that you yourself are an instrument. And so when you're on stage, you're getting to basically switch off of all the other stuff going on in your life that, is a nuisance or is, you can't control. And you're in a sort of, not a trance, but you are, totally immersed in music and exuding music and surrounded by music. And it's quite an incredible trip, and it's addictive, I guess, in that sense, because, it's not something you ever experienced in any other way in your life. Obviously we all have rapturous experiences in different areas of our life, but music's one way that that musical rush is unique.
Now, just for people exploring songwriting, so whether they want to break into a career or just as a hobby, what tips and tricks have you got for people?
Well, firstly, for the hobby, the 10,000 hours theory about everything in life is, I don't know if it's literally 10,000 hours, but the more songs you write, the better songs you'll write. Yeah. So that's the first thing. So don't get too hung up on the ones you've just written and think that's, people have got to fall in love with these songs right now. Move on. If they don't connect to people, don't worry about it. Write some more. Yep. Don't just keep pushing things because, that begs the question of what are you doing it for? Are you doing it to become famous or have other people pat you on the back?
Yeah.
Then that's probably not the most fruitful avenue. It might happen for you, but it usually doesn't. Yeah. The odds are, vanishingly small that you'll become someone like me that's had enough luck to succeed in their career and be able to still do it many decades later. We're very rare on the ground and out of the number of people doing music, and doing great music. But, just write songs and obviously another thing to do is also have an audience for your songs because they will teach you about what you are doing that's good, because even though people can misunderstand songs or not get it, and they can be, ignorant of how brilliant you are.
Yes.
They will, in some ways you'll learn, well, this one really gets people feeling something. I can, because you will feel that energy like I talk about, the audience is part of the equation and so you will feel the response. Even if they don't tell you, you'll feel that you've reached them. And that'll teach you something about yourself as the sort of song, the way, this song works. And why does that work? You feel it yourself. Why, somehow it'll teach you without, being some sort of course you have to take, 10 ways to write a song. There's no such thing. For people that want to do it for a career, I could only say that it's very difficult, like any career, and the arts especially, there's very few people make a living out of doing the arts. And it's like people that do dance, I think, which is another art form I really respect. I respect them all, but that's an incredible art form to me, people that dance. You do it if you can't stop yourself. Yeah. Because, it's great to have a dream, but dreams can become nightmares if you hold on to them too tight and, don't recognize reality.
Yeah.
So, do music for the joyful things, but don't do it for the things that are extraneous, like, what it can give you as far as, status or money or acclaim, because those things are not guaranteed. Yeah. And usually they're blind alleys anyway. So the thing that will never let you down is the actual music itself. So if you do music because you love it and because it's so fulfilling, then you don't need me to tell you because it'll teach you everything. You'll teach yourself all you need to know about music.
Yeah. And are there many songwriters out there that aren't musicians as well? Do you think that you need to be both?
Musicians. Well, people can write lyrics that without playing an instrument or knowing the least idea about. I don't know whether Bernie Taupin ever played an instrument, but he writes in a song lyrics aren't poetry. They're different. Yeah. They're meant to be sung and they shouldn't really be read separately. And good song lyrics imply the music in a funny way, and vice versa. The music can imply the lyrics. That happens for me when, the notes that I write can actually suggest syllables to me, which can then suggest words, which can suggest ideas of what the song is about. That's how What's My Scene happened. It sounded like What's My Scene to me, that little bit of melody. And so I'm going, what's that about? And I was kind of discovering the song as I'm writing it. The topic sort of was revealing itself to me as I'm writing it. But obviously, obviously anyone that loves music, that's enough. If you're musically oriented, you don't need to actually play an instrument. You can just tap your foot and sing a tune. And someone else who's a guitarist or a keyboard player might be able to find the right chords that go under that. But you've, in a sense, done the most important part, which is writing the melody and the lyric. And, you don't need to have a degree or have learnt any technical prowess on an instrument to do that. It's just knowing what feels right to you emotionally. And so no, you don't need to have any technical expertise. In fact, some of the best songs of all time are written by people that were totally naive. Like blues artists, they're basic stuff. They've written amazing things that, art is expression, and you don't need a degree to do that. You just have to just be honest with yourself and with, what you're trying to do.
Amazing. So I think we'll wrap up, Jay, but I just want to thank you so much for sharing some of your insights with us.
Thanks.
I've loved hearing about how you write and a little bit of history about your music.
Thanks.
So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Wasn't that amazing? He was so generous with his time and really got into the nitty-gritty of songwriting for us. So I hope that helps any of you would-be songwriters out there that are thinking of it as a career or trying to get into it as a hobby. If you enjoyed our chat, you can help support the podcast to continue to chat to wonderful Australian creatives by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing our socials with your friends. Totally Lit is an independent podcast, and you can make a contribution at www.buymeacoffee.com/totallylit. This will also help with equipment and podcasting platform fees. I love to interact with my listeners, so feel free to say hello either by email or social media. You can email me at totallylitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn and Twitter. I've also created a group on Facebook called Totally Lit Writing Community. It's a space to continue the conversation and share your writing successes, events, launches and latest projects. I also share any writing opportunities that I come across and competitions and call outs. So jump into the group and say hello. Thank you for listening to Totally Lit, and don't forget to go out into the world to read, write, create, ignite.